Do you think credit cards are terrible and no one should ever use them? Or do you think that credit cards are great and that everybody should have them and use them for every purchase? Well, I'm going to tell you why both of those mindsets are dead wrong.
All my diamonds shine 'cause they really diamonds.
Hey, it's Jordan, Millionaire Millennial. You know, credit cards get a bad rep because of the high interest and putting into debt and ruining marriages and like ruining people's lives and all the other things that credit cards are associated with. But to really understand if credit cards are good or bad to use, we need to understand exactly how credit cards work. When you make a purchase at the grocery store for say $50, if you're paying in cash, you hand the cashier some cash, he'll put it in the register, and then it'll be deposited into the grocer's bank account, you know, a few days later whenever the employee takes it to the bank. But if you're using a credit card, then the process is a little more involved. When you swipe your card or insert the chip, your credit card information along with the total of the purchase is sent to your banking establishment, for example, Bank of America or Chase, and then they relay that information to the credit card network, which is most of the time Visa or MasterCard or American Express. Your bank will then approve or deny the request based on your credit limit or anti-fraud protection. So if you try to buy a new $50,000 car with a credit card that's only got a $3,000 limit, the bank's going to decline the charge. Or if you're traveling abroad or making a bunch of purchases in the same day, that will flag as possible fraud, and your bank will usually decline the transaction and freeze your account. This has actually happened to me several times because I'll make lots of purchases from overseas for my business, and it's as simple as just calling the bank, telling them that, yeah, those purchases were me, they're legit, then they'll unfreeze your account and allow you to go through with the purchase process. If the charge is approved, it is lumped together with all of the other transactions of the day from your grocery store, and then it's sent to their bank to be processed. And then the grocer's bank will request the money from Visa, and then Visa will request the money from your bank, and then your bank will bill you. Wow, that's a lot of work for just one transaction, right? And because there's so much going on behind the scenes, the card networks and the banks want to be paid for their work. So how do they make money by just moving money around? Two ways. The first is transaction fees, which take place for every single transaction that you make on your card. Now, you don't actually pay the transaction fee most of the time. The merchant will pay the transaction fee. So when you go to the grocery store and you spend $50, the grocer has to pay the bank and the credit card network about a 3% fee plus like 15 cents. And this varies from credit card network to credit card network, so you have different fees for Visa, MasterCard, and American Express. But all of those fees are around 3%, and they usually have like a 10 or 15 cent fee on top of that. So on $50, they would receive something like $1. Now the next way is the more infamous way that the credit card companies make money. That is the debt-bringing, life and dream-crushing, marriage-ruining credit card interest. Now, if you're lucky, this interest might be as low as 15%, but for most people, it's over 25%. At 25% APR, that can rack up real fast. That means if you take a year to pay off a $5,000 purchase, you're paying an extra $1,250 on top of that. So yeah, it's really easy to see how people go into debt over this. At this point, you're probably thinking like 99% of people that you shouldn't use a credit card at all, and that I'm just going to pay cash for everything, forever. Now before you think that, let's explore how we can actually take a bite out of the bank and credit card company's money. Most banks offer what's called a cash back card, which you've probably heard of it. For every purchase you make, the bank will pay you a percentage of that transaction. For example, Chase Bank has a card that allows you 5% cash back on every Amazon.com purchase. So on a $50 purchase, they'll pay you $2.50. But wait, that can't be right because that's actually more money than the bank itself makes on the transaction, because remember, they only see maybe a 3% transaction fee. So how can they pay you 5%? That's easy. They charge you 25% APR. They offer you money back and then they charge you 5 times that in interest. So it seems that we're all doomed to be slaves to the credit card companies, constantly battling debt and trying to convince our spouses that we really need that new $3,000 TV plus $750 interest. Or do we? You know, if you want to be in the top 1%, you have to stop thinking like 99% of people do. So here is how the rich handle their credit cards. They only have 1 or 2 credit cards to ensure payment upkeep. They avoid interest entirely by paying their entire account balance up front at the end of every single month. No excuses. That means if they can't afford to pay it with their checking account or with cash, they don't buy it. They never pay late to avoid any sort of late fees. They use rewards cards like cashback and frequent flyer miles to actually increase their income. And probably the most important thing is that they plan their spending ahead of time to reduce overspending, like so many people fall victim to. And of course, they know their credit score, and it's typically near perfect. So to recap, only use a credit card if you have a set budget and you can control your spending. If you can practice the same concepts that the wealthy people do, then you can start taking money from the banks instead of them taking money from you.